Hello, this is Don Downey with Forest Metrics. I'm going to talk a little bit about how do you set up your products in Forest Metrics Pro. I am in Settings at the Products tab. You can set up to 12 different products. You can, as always, call them whatever you need and indicate your volume rule for each product. If you're not using a product, you can just leave that dash in the volume rule. You can turn on Topwood. Now, the way the Topwood model works, it uses an FIA model called the component segmentation model. It is calculating the biomass of every tree to either a 4-inch top or the total biomass. It's doing that automatically in the background. And then you can report that in either tons or cords. Anything that you merchandise in that tree, if you call some sawlog, if you call some pulp, will be subtracted from that FIA number, and the residual will be thrown in the Topwood bucket. There's a good example of exactly how that works here. You will note these frowny faces that show up everywhere are nice little cuts from the manual, things that you'd need to know for that section you're looking at. You can assign volume rules by species by product, and what we mean by this is that by default, all of your saw timber would be sold or measured in Doyle. If we go to assign volume rules by species by product, what you could do is override that. So for instance, if you're selling your white oak saw logs in Doyle to one mill, and you're selling your loblolly saw logs in Scribner to another mill, you can override those default product log rules by indicating as such at the species level. So I could say, this is a potentially bad example, but I could just say everything's Doyle, but my cherry is going to a different mill. It's being sold in Scribner. So my cherry saw logs will be evaluated in Scribner, where all of my other saw logs will be evaluated in Doyle. You can also set product specifications. So if you want to indicate certain products that are acceptable for each species and potentially certain diameters that are acceptable for those products, you can turn that on. Now you'll see by default, all products are available for all species all the time. But for instance, I'm not going to be selling balsam fir and veneer. So I'm going to deselect that. Now, when I tally a balsam fir tree, veneer is not going to be an option. And for that matter, neither will grade. Now, I can also indicate minimum and maximum diameters inside bark. So when you're tallying a tree, when you establish a diameter and it applies to form class, you're going to indicate a height and you're going to say it's 16 feet. The computer program will tell you what the diameter inside bark is at that point. And so if you say your balsam fir saw timber is only sold from 8 inches and up, if you get to the point in the tree where your diameter inside bark is less than 8 inches, you will no longer see saw log as an option as you're calling products for that balsam fir tree. So we can do a couple quick things. We can reset all of our DIBs, and that just means reset the minimum and maximum from 4 to 200. So that'll just go through all the species and reset everything. We can also copy the diameter inside bark to all. If you want to just fill in, well, generally speaking, saw timber, I'm not selling less than 10. Veneer, I'm not selling less than 12. Grade logs, I'm not selling less than 12. I can highlight this species, balsam fir is highlighted, and I can copy that diameter inside bark to all species. So it's going to go through all the species in the database and all those fields, and we're going to see all of the species now have that spec. We can also, if we've done a whole bunch of work and we want to reset it, we can check all of the products, and this will apply all products to all species. Or we can clear all the products if we want to work it from the other direction and say, well, I'm going to start with nothing and go through each species and just select the products that are acceptable for that species. And there is a brief description of this process that we just talked about with the frowny face.